How did you get started on your first kid, or was it pots and pans? How did you get started?
You just nailed it.
Really?
It was pots and pans. You know, as a kid, I used to just drill my parents. You know, I'd get a drum set. They don't want that noise around the house, you know. And so that's what I used to do, play on the pots and pans on the weekend, put the radio on and get stuff out of the kitchen. And we had this utility table that was aluminum or steel, you know, thin plate. So you put the stuff on there and make like a snare drum, you know, put the silverware on there, you know. And then I'd have the pans, you know, the pots would be the cymbals, you know, and I was a kid, you know. And so I would fantasize with the music books, the drum books, and all the sets in there. And so it wasn't until I was 14 that I had a little job. I saved up some money, and I was at a wedding reception. And the guy that was playing was a guy with an accordion and a drummer, right? And so I'm sitting there, you know, watching the drummer, you know, and he invited me to come home, look at the set, you know, on one of the breaks. He was, you know, try it out, you know, play it. So I got up there, and he ended up asking me to sit in because he seen I had a feel for the drums, you know. So that, at the end of that night, he was actually selling that set. He says, you know, I'll sell it to you if you want, you know. And next morning, I had my father at 8 o'clock in the morning. We were up at his house, and I bought the set.
Was that actually up here in the Bay Area?
That was I was living in San Francisco then, yeah.
Wow.
I was born and raised in San Francisco.
Oh, okay. What high school did you go to, if I may ask?
I went to Woodrow Wilson.
I went to Wilson, up on Mansell, up the hill.
Yeah,
oh my God! Oh my God!
And then I moved to Daly City and
Jefferson.
I went to graduate from Jefferson, but we had started the group December of '66. I graduated in '66, and so it was just I was like the last half a year of high school. Actually, when we started the group.
So was Sly at KSOL or Kt.I at that time?
He was at KSOL then, and he had a great radio show, fantastic radio show.
Yeah, I have a couple of air checks, and you start thinking about some of the baddest DJs, Jocko Henderson, Hunter Hancock, down at KGFJ. Sly was like right there.
He had a
cats.
whole program unto himself.
Yeah,
you know,
he's a monster.
He used to do some very innovative stuff, and if you could ever find any, you know, on the internet, I think there's some stuff.
Yeah, I have a couple of shows. Yeah, he was nice.
Yeah, and then you know, Freddie and I had a group called the Stone Souls at that point, and for about a year, and then Sly had made a couple of attempts to start groups that he wasn't happy with, and he had made one last swipe at it, and he had to kind of handpick everybody. And so one night I went to rehearsal for the Stone Souls, you know, and nobody was there from the group, and I walked in the room and asked Sly and Freddie, "Go, what's up tonight? We're going to start a new group tonight." You know, he had already arranged for everybody to come over, so we met that night and talked. We actually played very little that first night. We talked about what we were going to do, and everybody was excited about it. And it was unique because you know what we were doing, especially at that time. You know, we had black, white, male, female, and that was mid-'60s.
Man.
Yeah.
And
from rates riots going on.
Yeah,
at that point,
yeah.
And stuff like that, you know. So it was a challenge at first, but the music was what drove it.
You know what, man? Of all the groups I've ever studied, and you know, I live this, man. Sly and the Family Stone, to this day, is the most important group that I've ever had the privilege to study. And on the real side, I'm glad just to be able to sit here and tell you, you would have had to really been around from 68, 69. Those are my early childhood memories. So, you know, you always remember what made you happiest or whatever. And when I started thinking about, like when I was talking about the signal coming down, if you like pop music, you know, Sly could do the vibe of David Cassidy, you know, Have Fun in the Summertime. That was David Cassidy, the Partridge Family, that vibe. If you wanted funk, it was James, but it wasn't so confined. It was a different type of approach. There was jazz, there was everything, and I guarantee you this, Ray Charles.
We used to do some of those things, some of those things.
I've sat up, everybody, Gregg, that I've talked to, Mr. Rico, if I can call it Gregg, I've talked to cats from EWF, just different people. I've talked to people from Funkadelic's camp. I know Larry Dodson from the Barcades. I know some of the guys from Confunction. I mean, no matter where you want to go, they all point back to Sly and the Family Stone. The guys from Lakeside, Mark Wood, and those guys, at one point or another, we'll be sitting up talking about music and talking about what they did. And you know, Ohio was kind of almost like Funk Central, but it would always come back to you guys, man. I mean, even people, myself and John Blackwell, Prince's drummer, and man, you know, some of the stories, it would take a whole show to sit up and talk about what you guys have meant to Prince, whether you guys will ever hear from his mouth or not, but I'm around enough people to kind of know that without question, before there was sampling and that type of stuff, people have sampled the feeling from Sly and the Family Stone unlike any other band. Even James Brown, when you start talking about like the JB's LPs, Doing It to Death, he started talking about wanting to take it higher, man. So I don't know what my life would be like musically without having Sly and the Family Stone been a big part of it. The Jackson 5, their first album, man. I know I'm talking a lot, man, but there's so much history with you guys, man. And when I finally saw you guys get inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, man, it was kind of one of them things, my eyes kind of got watery because I thought about my older brothers and just the whole shebang. I need to let you talk a little bit, man, but I can't believe I'm sitting here talking to you. I'm not a groupie, but I can't believe I'm sitting here talking to you. I never thought I would actually, on the real side, get this kind of close and this kind of vibe, you know, just to sit up and talk about, just to thank you, man, more important for just your contribution to everybody, you know.
We had fun doing it, and then, you know, like I said, the music is what drove us, and just, you know, the inspiration to go through all that we had to, all the challenges at that time to do what we did, and that was really the catalyst. And if I had to do it over again, I most definitely would.
Even your drum style, though, man, when I sit back and listen to something just as basic as Everyday People, some of the stuff you would do on the Toms would later be heard later, like on, let's just say, the Jackson 5's Get It Together LP, like Get It Together. If you go back and isolate yourself and listen to what James Gatson was doing on some of the roles, go back and listen to Everyday People, and it would sound like, to some people who don't really understand music, a basic 4/4, but there were some things you were doing on that record that was just absolutely fascinating. And even You Can Make It If You Try, the marching band thing, and Sex Machine, that's a whole nother level, man. It's just blues, funk, at its apex, man, you know. Man.
Yeah, a lot of people ask me about those recordings, and you know, actually, the tracks, when we would lay down the rhythm tracks, and then they would be further developed, you know, over time, and lyrics, horn lines, and what have you, overdubs, and then I would 99% of the time I'd go back and lay the drums down again, as, you know, overdub the drums to the track, because a lot of times the feel maybe would change, or the arrangement, or there would be certain things that you had to address rhythmically and with textures on the drums to these new elements to the song. Songs like Thank You, which was really built up in Sly One.
To this day, man, I remember him calling, the funkiest thing I've ever heard in my life, man.
I remember him calling and saying, wait, because, you know, that song we had tried many different ways before it ended up being what it is. I mean, you wouldn't recognize probably, you know, if you was to hear some of the original tracks. And but that's, you know, something that, you know, that's when he's a prolific writer, and you got to be able to experiment, and if you're looking for something, not stop until you find that what it is, what you feel it, what you hear it, you know. And it was great that he, you know, took the time to do that, you know, because it usually hit the mark.
Man, a brand new thing, life, and to this day, the first mind-blowing album that I actually have ever heard in my life, the first album that really blew my mind was that Stand LP.
Mm-hmm.
That album, man, What's Going On will come a little bit later on and kind of mess me up, but that Stand, as far as I still say to this day, was the first funk album that was actually ever made, because people, I don't know if you guys can really remember, James Brown was the king of the soul chart, but it was more from the standpoint of having like singles. But as far as a concept album,
Right.
that standout, man, you guys knocked it out the park for real.
Well, you know, James had, you know, grooves, and he would make a statement with, you know, what he was saying, but Sly would write about issues too, and important issues sometimes.
Oh yeah, without
Or
knocking the other side and preaching down, you still
exactly
right.
It was all a positive message, and it was, you know, there were social issues, and you know, and he would address these things in a way that everybody could understand, and musically, and you put all the elements together, and it just made a big statement. I mean, you realize it now, many years later, as the songs in those recordings still touch people around the world. Here we go, generations removed from when we were, you know, just as you know, the entire group. So it's like, you know, sometimes you know, I get put back by, you know, just we go to Australia last year. You know, you see kids out there into the music, understand the songs, and it could be, you look out there, you're playing, and it was, that moment could have been 40 years ago, you know, and these kids are, you know, 4 or 5 generations removed from that time.
It's every bit as relevant. It's probably more relevant now, though, than it was then, especially with the way times are. I've always said you guys and Curtis Mayfield were every bit to the civil rights movement. And this is before Stevie and Marvin Gaye would do What's Going On. But we're talking about the late 60s, like you say, the time that we're talking about. You guys and Curtis Mayfield were every bit on that side of it.
Yeah.
What Kingdom didn't address, you guys addressed the same stuff, but just the way you guys were able to do it was almost like somebody on the corner, just, you know, a friend talking to you or whatever, and you got, no matter what walk of life you were in, you got it, you know.
It was a very interesting time to be in, and then to be in a position to where you could, you know, bring creatively important things down for a minute, and get a snapshot of those things that would touch other people, and, you know, in different parts of the world, even, you know, around the world. And so it feels good to be part of that. And like I said, if I had the opportunity to do it again, I would.
Real quick, let's get to some entertainment.